right. So as we mentioned, I'm Lauren Kelley, and Nova Harris is my partner in crime here. So we're with the University of Delaware. If you're curious about the image that you see here, Nova created this with Dolly. She's a mastermind when it comes to AI image generation, if you just happen to be curious. So we're really, really excited to kick off the new year for IDN. I've always wanted to do a presentation on here, so this is really close to my heart, and even closer to my heart that I can do it with Nova, who is a great work colleague. Just the mastermind has taught me so many wonderful things with generative AI and brought me on board to this kind of new wave of learning. So I want to thank her so much for doing that. But we're excited to talk with you about this story. She is the brilliance behind UD StudyAiDE, so don't let her like hide behind this team that you see here on this screen. All of us kind of slowly came on board and we're a part of this, but this is truly Nova's brainchild. So we're thrilled to talk with you about the importance of prompt engineering in this process to create learning objects. I'm also thrilled to tell you about my role in this as an instructional designer to shed light on how important instructional designers are in the landscape of generative AI. We'll also talk about how we were able, together with our multiple intelligences, to push the models to do even more in line with the idea of course mapping and the idea of a pedagogical lens. So we're going to unpack a lot of that stuff today. We'll talk about challenges that we've had in this process, really great accomplishments in this process, as well as just the decision-making process from a higher educational standpoint. So without further ado, Nova's going to kick us off.
Hi, everyone. It is nice to be here. And despite what Lauren may say, it was a collaborative effort. A person can have an idea, but they need the expertise from different fields to really pull it together. So first, I'll just let you see there's a very zoomed out overview of UD Study Aid, and then we will go like how it came to be. So you see here that UD Study Aid, you may not understand the little dots and circles, but you will at the end of it. But it is something where we are using faculty data and the power of AI in order to help students study material that faculty have created, their own content. So this is just a really cool overview of what UD Study Aid is. And then next slide, we'll do the structure of it. So UD StudyAiDE is basically taking faculty expertise and using AI to generate different formats. So for us, we want faculty to be at the center of this, of what they say the content is should be, and not have whatever AI has said in their field. We want AI to use its power to generate different materials, different ways of viewing the materials, different ways of ingesting the materials, but the expertise and the knowledge source is all faculty members. So this all started is that, as we said earlier, we built our own lecture capture system. And lecture capture basically records the audio and the video of a classroom of a subject. And we built this around 15 years ago. We put it in all the centrally scheduled classrooms. So first, the buy-in for that was kind of small, but eventually it became part of the curriculum of faculty members realizing the use of this technology. Sometimes faculty would have it available right away, and sometimes only when someone was sick or absent, or sometimes they would have it for exams and reviews. So they were able to use these tools that we built in ways that suited them. And as such, because we listen to them, we develop a rapport with our faculty members. So then when AI kind of like came out and reared its head around November 2023, and they were like, what are we going to do? We knew that for us to set a standard, especially an ethical standard of how to use AI and have a receptacle and a wall garden of AI use for our faculty members would be really beneficial. So what we did, because we had 20 years worth of transcripts, basically, I went home one day and I asked a faculty member, hey, can I use one of your courses to see if I can do something AI? And they're like, sure, Nova, go ahead. So with that, I went and I at the very beginning of AI, I said, can it actually transform what a faculty says in a transcript to other things that faculty may think students can use? So I ran it through and I had it transform to different things. I'm like, wow, can actually work. Now, considering that we have faculty members, some faculty members who have taught the same course multiple times a semester, many semesters a year for multiple years, we have a lot of data. And as such, that data has become kind of a gold mine. So what we did was, now that we knew that this is something that could work conceptually, we wanted to make sure we built a ethical foundation. So we said, okay, what are some of the ethical practices that we want with AI? And one of some things we will make sure that we use in this project. One of the things is that we want to make sure that the human has the first and final say in what the AI generates. That was very important to us. And we wanted to make sure that we weren't just building it because it was cool. Even though I do like to build cool things, I also wanted to be useful. So we talked to faculty members and we said, if we built something like this, would you use it? Would you try it out? What are some of the little concerns that you may have? And what are some of the things that you really, really are excited about? So we did a lot of research. And then we realized that we have so many experts on a college campus. Uh, Actually, I've been telling people that university is uniquely positioned to be at the forefront of AI revolution because we are filled with experts and we actually have a heart and a passion for education and ethical practices. So we talk to people, we talk to ethicists, we talk to other engineers, we talk to philosophers, and especially instructional designers. Because yes, I can build a flashcard. I can build something that, has a question and an answer, and then I'm good. But what is the pedagogy behind good flashcards and good learning objects? So we pulled our team together and I said, Lauren, I need you in on this project. And she was like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, no, I need you in on this because when I worked with AI, I realized that it really comes down to communication. Prompting is just communication, and communication requires context. So for me, the context of a cool application that AI can do really cool bells and whistles is not really the same as a context of a learning object that can be really beneficial for studying and for learning. So one of the things that Lauren and I have really kind of talked about was the idea of there is something beyond human intelligence and there's something beyond machine intelligence. And this is we call it hybrid intelligence. For us, hybrid intelligence is the merging of me working together with Lauren, working together with AI. And all that becomes something greater than the parts of it. So when we did this, we wanted to make sure that for UD StudyAiDE, we highlight our faculty knowledge and expertise, and we make sure that the advocacy of our students' learning takes priority. Next slide. So real quick, one of the things we want to make sure is the data that's being used is secure. So we made sure that we use Amazon Bedrock, and Amazon Bedrock is basically this gateway that has access to all of these LLMs, which is large language models and AI products. And Amazon has their own service agreement with these things. So they say, okay, anyone who uses Claude or Llama, they cannot have their data used for training. It can only stay with the content owners. So when we tell faculty members that we're going to make sure this is ethical, this is one of the things that we tell them, that their data will not be used. They won't see it when they go on ChatGPT and happen to put their name on there that's been used for training data. All this will remain secure and reliable. Next slide. So I tried to make this as whimsical as possible. It's still a work in progress. Uh, it's not too complicated, but I'm trying to make sure that people understand the basics of this. What we do is we take content, and for right now, transcripts, and we ask the AI, can you give me the topics, the subtopics, and the definition as you see these topics? And as it does that, we give all these topics to the faculty member and says, is this correct? Can you verify? Can you verify that this topic actually is what it says for the definition? And this is the name of the topic. And once that's all human reviewed and verified, it's all stored in Knowledge Graph and connected to those materials. And then once everything is stored, we can actually use AI to take that information and change it into whatever format that we want. So if a faculty member says flashcards is good enough, that's all I need, they're teaching a 100 level course, as opposed to I would like case studies because I'm teaching a 350 level course. You can actually now prompt against your own data. And that's something that I'm like, Lauren, now that we're doing this way, we actually have to not only learn how to prompt effectively, teach other faculty and instructors how to prompt effectively and what does effectively actually mean. Next slide. So this is a really cool, looks like a brain oversight of a Psych 100 course. Now, it looks kind of like a brain, looks like a constellation, but what it is all of the chunks of material connected to the topics, connected to the place where it's taken from, connected to the course. And all of that is connected in relationships. And because of that, right, it's really because of that, AI knows how to traverse all that information and pull the information from this instead of the data that it's trained on. Because it knows how to create a flashcard, it knows how to do a summary, it knows how to do that structure. But what we're saying is that the content itself take from the faculty members. Next slide. So here's a zoomed in real quick of our Psych 100 course, and you can see in the green are the topics, and then in the orange is is the chunks of text from the transcripts, and then the blue is the recording course, and then general psychology is the actual course. Okay, and then a brief overview of the UI. This is a sample course. And for the faculty member, they can go ahead and verify or decline the topics. They can go ahead and change the definitions as we see it. We tend to run the transcripts through this process multiple times so that the faculty member can get a baseline of what the topics is, because usually it's slightly changed and the topic name may not be what they actually want. And so they're able to go ahead and configure it the way that they want. And then here is a the faculty review of the actual learning objects. So there's 2 points of human review, is reviewing the topic and then whatever learning objects you want to create. So no, the student isn't just on the fly using a chat bot to go ahead and create learning objects. Here the faculty is saying, for this concept, I would like to be able to create flashcards or create summaries or what have you, and also do learning levels, which Laura will probably talk about later. Okay. And then one of the things that this does is now there's an opportunity for instructional designers to go in and help create learning objects that's customized. For me, I'm like, I can do flashcards, that's good enough. But for other faculty members, they may want to do something more customized. And so here we have, because you have the data all mapped out, you can create the object structure and what you want actually, what materials you actually want in there. So the faculty member who is doing a psychology course, she's teaching a 100 level course and she's teaching a 350 level course. And she's like, the flashcards are great for the 100 level course because I want them to be able to understand and memorize certain topics. But for the 350 level course, I want something a little bit more robust. I not only want them to know topics, but I want them to understand how the concepts connect with each other. And I want to be able to do examples. So for here, we're like, okay, so because we have a repository of prompts, we can create different prompts and see how they actually come out and then be able to tweak it that way. Next slide. And here we also are saying the students need also to have access to their own metrics. So because we are storing this information and the student can opt in to see how do I study best, they can create study decks and have their metrics tracked, and the AI can help them with some review. And because of that, that's also prompting. We're talking to instructional designers and Lauren on what makes a good study session. And then a quick little geek out on a study session, the next slide. So it looks a little overwhelming maybe, but this is basically what it will look like in a knowledge graph to study session. Is the student will be able to start a study session, and then they will have their own deck of learning objects. And then the learning object, they'll just go next, next, and then they get to see, oh, this learning object I did well on, this one I think I want to review again. And then they'll be able to say, for this study session in which I use some of the faculty submitted learning object and some where I put my own topics in, I think I'm going to get a good grade on this exam. And so they'll have self-reporting on there. And when they go in the next time, there'll be questions of, did you do as good as you thought you would do? And then they'll be able to have the AI help them analyze what creates a good study session for them. So we've been working with educational technologists on what study sessions are good. How often should they be touching on a topic? Um, how should they be studying in the morning? Should they be studying in the evening? And these are all metrics that they can have collected on themselves, and then have the AI in conjunction with their educational technologists guide them to what studying methods are best for them. And I think that is it for me.
I felt like Vanna White. That was a lot of fun. Okay, so like Nova was talking about, we had this kind of synergy happening. Yeah, gosh, we've been working together now for, I guess, the last couple of years now, I guess, really. And I'll be really honest with you. I'm this instructional designer on a team. I'm a remote instructional designer, so I don't really often see a lot of my colleagues in person, except when we travel for conferences and such. And more specifically, I never interfaced with Nova, who's this software engineer on our team, unless there was a ticket and it had to do with like Kaltura and a faculty member, and I initiated the ticket on their behalf. So I would never realistically work with Nova. So this has been a real treat. So basically, generative AI is what brought us together. And more specifically, it was an opportunity to travel to EDUCAUSE together. And on a very personal note, this was back in 2023, and EDUCAUSE was the first time I had gotten back on a plane since the pandemic. So it was a huge deal for me. Our director came to us and said, "You have this opportunity to go to EDUCAUSE to learn a little bit more about generative AI. They're having this special meeting. Are you guys game?" And I, I didn't even stop to think about it. I was just like, yeah, I'm game. I will figure it out. And so the two of us had an opportunity to travel together on behalf of the University of Delaware to find out a few different things. So a lot of this journey was from the technical standpoint, really for Nova, because she had this really big idea for this thing she'd already been testing out and already knew it could work. So it was more information gathering for her to just see, well, what's out there and what are other people actually doing? And to her surprise, there was a real opportunity here with UD StudyAiDE because nobody else was doing it. And people were like, wait, what are you doing? Can you tell us more about that? And in that moment, all of the networking started. Like it was a game changer from that point on with UD StudyAiDE. So at that point, we were, I think, collectively starting to channel our own expertise into this process. And then I think at that point, that's really where I was kind of beginning to understand how instructional design was so important and what I could do to help support with the guidance of Nova, of course, with, every step of the way as she was building UD StudyAiDE, where I could tap in and where I was needed. So it was this happy medium of bridging this kind of technical experience with non-technical experience because for her, she truly understands natural language processing, whereas I'm on the learning theory and pedagogical strategies standpoint. So what you see here that we're actually sharing with you, and I believe it should be linked in our PDF as well if you want to read the article. Decided to write an article together. So going back to the image at the very beginning of the slide and the images that you see here, Nova created these. And a lot of what she was teaching me behind image generation was the idea of, like she was talking about, communication and just in writing and how to effectively prompt and what is an effective prompt to generate the outcome that you're looking for. So we wrote about this idea of storytelling behind image generation or AI image generation. And we've had a lot of fun with it. So I was able to provide that instructional designer lens, and she was able to provide her software engineering lens. So it was a lot of fun. We had the opportunity to do it, and we published this last year. So it's really brought everything kind of full circle. So, some of the other things in terms of where everything kind of began with my role as an instructional designer was this idea of Nova saying, like, look, I can build all this really cool stuff, like she said before, but I don't really understand like how this stuff is supposed to like connect to the learning outcomes and things like that. So that's where I came into play with the first thing I thought about when she talked about learning objects was like, well, how do you know that you're learning and well, at what level? Is the competency, are there competencies? Have we defined any of these things? So we started to do a lot of, and where I was helpful, I think, as an instructional designer, was building a lot of prompts from scratch and building them with Nova, right? So, like, we had to put in there what a TA was. We had to put in there what is a case study? What is an example? What is a quiz? But more importantly, I thought, well, why wouldn't we just use Bloom's taxonomy and align that with the learning objectives? So at that point in time, that's also when Oregon State University had their, if everybody remembers that, they're adapting meaningful learning in the age of AI. And so they kind of had their scale and just some ways to rethink and reimagine the Bloom taxonomy in relation to levels of competency and where they fall on Bloom's taxonomy. So my initial thought was, well, why don't we just readapt this? And so what you see here, we actually shared this in one of our like focus groups with students, was to just shed light on what like our learning mastery prompts would look like and what those learning levels would be, where we condensed them to 4. So you can see that we collapsed like remembering and understanding, applying and analyzing, evaluating and creating. And then we had this like integration of all the skills together as that 4th level. And then in addition to that, a really funny story is really randomly, Nova is like, hey, and this is like on Zoom chat. So in like pedagogical terms, like what is like some learning, like dynamic learning? Like how would you like express that? Like is there a pedagogical term for that? And so I would get these random questions like this all throughout, like as we're like designing and prompting and adding to what our model is AI Blue, and the prompt repository that Nova created is like, well, how do we define this? What does this look like? And so I'm like stumped and I'm like, you know what? I don't know. Let me do some research. And so I start researching. And then actually at that point, we start roping in a couple other IDs to pick their brains and see what they think. And we ended up coming up with thematic learning. And essentially, with thematic learning, it's just this bigger picture idea of this big thing. You can break it, you can outline it into key topics. There's this overall concept. Maybe you have them brainstorm on larger topics than smaller topics, bring everything together, scaffold, have them do group work. But essentially, you're addressing everything or learning everything in kind of like this scaffolded way, right? So, scaffolded learning. So, it makes perfect sense for learning levels and just a way of approaching the learning process for the learning object. So this is kind of one example here. So in addition to that, I started getting really confident with this whole prompt engineering thing. And if you remember back then, prompt engineering was a huge deal. Like it was almost like no one could do it except people that did it. And like all these jobs were out there for prompt engineering, which I still believe they are too now. And I still think that it is very, very important. But I think now with generative AI, growing so much and advancing so quickly, it's not as important for you to have this huge, heavy prompt. You can still very easily do a chain of thought where you're giving a series of smaller tasks in order to get to your desired outcome. But at this point in time, again, I was still learning with AI and I was still learning from my non-technical standpoint. And so I was building with Claude, and Claude is actually our base model for AI Blue. So it just kind of made sense to start to get familiar with Claude. And more importantly, I just liked Claude better than ChatGPT because Claude seemed to be more analytical in nature. You could push the model a little bit more. It would give you generated outputs that you wouldn't even necessarily ask for. But it informed the thinking that you might have had that you didn't even know you had. So Claude was prime for that in terms of using that to kind of train AI Blue. So, in essence, what you see here is me providing context in the form of what AI Blue or UD StudyAiDE was all about, where I was giving Claude more and more context to get to know me and to get to know this project. And in addition to that, I started because I knew in some instances that prompt engineering, I was still learning how to do it really well. I would use Claude to help me talk to AI Blue to train AI Blue, essentially. And so that's kind of what you see here. In addition to that, what's even more fun and where our hybrid intelligences came into place again was that again with Claude, again, getting more comfortable with Claude, I started to incorporate our learning levels and thematic learning into the learning objects. So initially, Nova showed you the flashcard in that demo, right? For the flashcards, we focused really heavily on the flashcards. How can we make the flashcards? What would the front and the back look like? What's the content going to be on the flashcard? How intense, can that information be? Can we adapt that to actual learning levels, right? So can you have a learning level, like a level one based type of flashcard? Could you have a level four? What would that look like? How would you prompt the model and train the model to do that differently? So I started playing around with that and creating that chain of thought. Then I didn't necessarily know that was chain of thought, but then roped in with Nova and also our other colleague Joe, and they were like, we need to create a chain of thought. Like that's what we need to do. We need to create a chain of thought. And that's what we did. We built that prompt and that was stored in our prompt repository as well. So here's an example of what I started. So if you're familiar with Mad Libs or prompt templates, you'll see that they're bracketed areas where you would fill in your context. So in turn, these are prompts that we could share with faculty where we share you when we share more about the process. So faculty could actually revise these prompts or instructional designers continue to add to these prompts or revise these prompts. But even better than that, at this point in time, Claude allowed us to actually share our conversations. I can't do it now, I don't think. I think that's a premium now. But at that point in time, we could share our conversations. And so Nova was like, hey, so I want to start like prompting more based on case studies, right? And like tying it to the learning levels. And I'm like, I got you. So I shared that conversation with her. And then she did some stuff like she worked her magic with her Nova brain, and this is what we got. And so if you'll notice here, it created its own competency levels off of the thematic learning, off of those learning levels, and it created competencies for the not only the flashcards but also for the case studies at this point in time. And so Claude just kept building on the context we kept giving it. So it was just really cool, and clearly it was working. It was 100% working. So at this point, we knew now, like, uh-oh, we're gonna need more help. Like, you're the lead ID, but we need more people to like help us with this. Like, can we take you and like, can more people like you like help us work through this? Because right now we're working with pilot faculty, but in the future, we have the capacity to have, I think, what did you say, Nova? Maybe up to about 5 faculty at a time, something like that, that we could probably manage because we are a tiny team. So we knew that we needed more help. And we knew that it was working. But in hindsight, we're pumped. We totally know this is a breakthrough. We totally know AI Blue is doing exactly what we trained it to do, and it's working. But okay, I need to have this conversation with other instructional designers on my team. And we had done this very early on. And keep in mind, this is very conceptual, right? So there, at this point in time, wasn't necessarily a prototype. So I know sometimes when there isn't a visual or a prototype, it's very hard for people to envision where they fit. And if they haven't been along the journey, it's also very hard for them to understand where they fit and where they can offer their areas of expertise. So initially we introduced AI Blue and like, hey, so instructional designers can totally help us. You can add to the prompt repository, you could revise. And it was like, but up. It felt very flat. And instructional designers were like, okay. So what ended up happening just with the generative AI boom and just almost kind of organically was I decided to start doing AI learning circles. And AI learning circles, in hindsight, proved to be a really great way to start communicating and slowly introducing the idea of generative AI and how our role with instructional design can be seen in generative AI and how important it is and how it's important in our work and how it can actually help us in our work and working with faculty. So we started in these areas. So we had done one, for example, on AI video generation. We had done another one on AI image generation because Nova and I had already been doing that stuff too anyway. And we had done some Keep Calm, Teach On sessions. That's a really big like professional development series that we offer a couple of times a year for faculty. And so we did some sessions on and around that too. I had done some work with case-based learning and then infusing AI as a part of that. And then we had another instructional designer like myself who was already really actively using generative AI to do an AI learning circle on the ways in which she was using AI to help her troubleshoot a lot of really tricky ways that like if she didn't have learning objectives, let's say for a class and she was, trying to design a course for a faculty member and she wasn't hearing from that faculty member, or just reorganizing a syllabus to make sure it's a little bit more navigable, things like that. So she shared insights on all of those things, and I think that was really what kind of helped everybody get on board. And slowly but surely, more and more people were talking about generative AI and the ways they were using large language models in their work. And lo and behold, we were ready to reintroduce UD StudyAiDE again and offer up the opportunity for instructional designers to help. And thus the expansion of our team began. So we used that opportunity in our very last learning circle to reintroduce UD StudyAiDE. And we helped instructional designers actually understand that their area of expertise in understanding assessment, understanding learning theories and learning strategies, course mapping was critical to this process in helping to support faculty that chose to be part of a pilot with UD StudyAiDE. And so we talked about, again, we revisited that exploring prompts, adding prompts, testing prompts, fine tuning prompts. We also mentioned that they had the ability to help us recruit any faculty that might be interested in being a part of UD StudyAiDE, as well as helping us just reimagine, like, is flashcards what we should be doing? Should we be doing quizzes or summaries, or should there be something completely different that maybe we're overlooking as far as what a learning object is that's valuable? So that is kind of the story of our buy-in, but also kind of the challenges that we initially had with it. And I definitely think generative AI took a lot of people by surprise. Although AI has always been around, it just happened so swiftly. It happened so big, and it is just continuing to move so fast. And I just think it was just very scary. And the way that it has been sensationalized in the media probably hasn't helped either. So essentially, in that meeting, when we shed light and just help IDs reimagine the process of what UD StudyAiDE is, we presented this visual, and it just really broke down, in essence, the ground up. So starting from when they're in Kaltura, which for us is UD Capture, that's where all of our recordings are and the lectures from faculty are. We start there. This gets sent over to AI Blue. Topics are created. Faculty have the opportunity to pick and choose those topics, review those topics. And then there's some opportunities to refine, right, and add and take away. And then there's an approval process. But more importantly, that 6 and that 7, that's where ID support is necessary. So when we talk about those human intelligences and when we talk about keeping the human in the center, IDs are the human in the center. And so I think that's what really helped everything really come together. So it wasn't so technical, but it became this non-technical, like, oh, okay, well, we could do that. Yeah, we could totally do that. That's totally what we do all the time. Like, absolutely. And in essence, we are basically helping faculty with the course mapping process because this is all about ensuring that number one, is this the right learning object to select out of the array of learning objects that are available to you. Does this align with your learning objectives? Does it make sense? And that's where an instructional designer is critical. So, and Nova you can chime in on this one. I think both of us, because really Nova did all of the networking and it was so cute. She would say, I'm peopling today versus programming today. But I think all of this really took her by surprise too, where there was just an outcry and just everybody was excited about this project and they knew it was innovative and groundbreaking. So, these were the people that we tapped into, and she's really the one that's done all this peopling. I did a little peopling, but she really did all of the peopling and traveling and going to other conferences and presenting like we are today and shedding light on that. So Nova, I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
Um, I I was really impressed and surprised at the enthusiastic responses from the faculty, from colleagues, from different experts around the university, and then the other higher education institutions. They seem to appreciate the thought that we put into this and that we want to make sure that what we build is something that is ethical and something that we can standardize and other people can say, oh, well, if we can build it with ethics and correctly and, talk to people who actually have stake in this, then, maybe that's something that we can all build. So, and also the library was one of my first go-tos. I talked to the library and I said, you are going to be really important in this AI revolution. I want you in on this because this is all data and you're all data people. And so talking to them about, taxonomy of a subject or even the ontology of the knowledge graph or going ahead and referencing some of the way that they organize information, keeping them in a loop has something that's also been of primary importance.
Absolutely. But other than that, that is pretty much our story of UD Study Aid and our journey in our partnership. I probably never would have developed a relationship like this with Nova had it not been for UD Study Aid. So we hope that you enjoyed the story behind this innovative project and we welcome questions.